Blog Post 1. Welcome to Darkwater. The mournful siren glides silently through the pre-dawn darkness, its silhouette barely visible against the murky horizon. The thick veil of mist clings to the waters like a living thing, twisting and curling as though drawn to the ship's motion. It is no ordinary fog. Its ghostly tendrils reach languidly across the deck, sliding along the hull as if probing the vessel's resolve. The air is damp and oppressive, saturated with the sharp tang of seawater and laced with a faint, sour undercurrent. Kyron Gloome stands near the rail, his hands gripping the damp wood as unease settles in his chest. His form a shadow within the mist. His sharp angular features are partially hidden beneath the deep hood of a worn, oil-slicked cloak, the fabric glistening faintly in the humid air. The hood obscures the polished curve of his horns, though the faint ridges catch the light when he tilts his head. Beneath the hem of the cloak, his tail is coiled tightly around his leg, a reflexive habit born of years spent concealing the features that mark him as other. In his hands, he holds a weathered envelope, its edges softened by countless readings, the ink within crafted in his sister's unmistakable flowing script. It is faintly smudged as though dampened by time or tears, but it is the name at the bottom that sends a chill through him. Detective Elias Varn, a name that belongs to the dead. The city of Darkwater emerges from the fog in pieces, its form revealed in slow, haunting increments. First come the jagged silhouettes of its largest structures, rising like teeth against the twin moon's pale light. Then the canals stretch into view, dark, liquid veins threading through the city's heart, reflecting the moon's bruised glow and fractured patterns. At last, the docks materialize, skeletal and forlorn, their warped wooden planks half consumed by the murky depths below. The city seems to breathe with the tide, as shadows expanding and contracting as if alive. Kyron's curious amber eyes pierce the mist, staring at the city's looming form with a mix of dread and grim determination. The oppressive weight of the city presses against him, heavier with each passing moment, as though the city itself resents his arrival. The envelope crackles faintly in his hand, a reminder of its contents. The letter had been a siren's call, luring him here, to this vessel and to this city that now lay before him, with promises that both terrify and tempt him. His destination, an address scrawled at the bottom of the letter, lingering in his thoughts. Varn and Associates, Drowned Quarter. The fog seems to thicken as the ship glides closer to the docks, the tendrils growing bolder, brushing against Kyron's boots and swirling around him like insistent fingers. The faint noises of the city sound warped, as though the mist itself smothers them, twisting them into something alien. Kyron pulls his cloak tighter around him, feeling the damp chill seep through the fabric to his skin. The ship moans as it docks, its hull grinding against the warped and swollen timbers of the pier. The mist clings to the city's edges like a jealous lover, reluctant to release its grip. The air here is alive with sound. Dock workers bellow orders over the groan of cranes and the splash of cargo striking water. Gondoliers in shadowed boats call out to potential passengers in hushed, practiced tones. A humorless laugh echoes faintly from the far end of the pier, quickly swallowed by the murk as if the city itself conspires to keep its secrets hidden. As Kyron steps onto the dock with measured purpose, his boots land softly on the slick, uneven wood, the faint creak of aged planks breaking the heavy silence. He adjusts his hood, pulling it forward to better conceal his features, the fabric catching on the jagged tips of his hidden horns. Above, the twin moons cast their eerie radiance throughout the lingering haze. One, a soft crimson red, the other, a pale icy blue. Their light dances along the swirling fog, painting fleeting patterns on wet wood and stone. Shadows writhe in the mist, some spawned by the fractured glow of the city's lanterns, others shifting with a life of their own, moving in ways that defy logic. Kyron's hand instinctively brushes the grip of his weapon, hidden beneath his coat, as he feels a shadow dart toward him from the gloom. A boy, no older than 14, moves with the practiced quickness of someone who has spent their entire life in the shadows of this city. Kyron barely feels the pickpocket's fingers graze his coat before his own reflexes take hold. He draws his pistol, an ember lock, sleek and well-worn. Its dark barrel gleams faintly in the moonlight as Kyron levels it at the boy. The thief freezes, his wide eyes glinting like those of a cornered animal. "Move along," Kyron says softly, his voice steady and low. His tail shifts beneath the hem of his coat, a subtle, subconscious movement he doesn't bother to restrain. The boy's gaze flickers downward, catching the unnatural shift of fabric, and the flicker of fear passes over his face. Kyron doesn't flinch. He doesn't threaten. He simply is, and that is enough. The boy stumbles back, muttering some half-formed apology before vanishing into the fog as quickly as he came. Kyron watches him go, waiting until the sound of hurried footsteps fades entirely, and then he holsters his weapon with a practiced motion. Petty thieves aren't worth his time. He again recalls the letter in his pocket, its edges soft and creased from days of handling. The words within, written in his sister's delicate hand, are as haunting now as when he first read them. Kyron, I write to you now with great urgency and little time for explanations. You must make your way to the city of Darkwater without delay. Your passage aboard the mournful siren has already been arranged. Consider it an old favor repaid. Do not hesitate, for the opportunity to speak may not present itself again. Darkwater isn't what it seems. It devours the unwary, and every shadow hides a secret. A place where shadows move even in the brightest moonlight. Trust no one and tread carefully. There are things far older and far crueler than we ever imagined. I came here looking for answers and found only more questions. Trust no one. Speak little. Listen to everything. Once you arrive, come to my office in the Drowned Quarter. You will find it still standing, though much else has changed. Bring the enclosed key. Its purpose will soon become clear, though I urge you to keep it safe until then. And beware the city below. They say it is empty, but the tides carry whispers of those who linger still. The canals of Darkwater do not merely run through the city, they reach deep into the bones of its predecessor, connecting the living to the dead. Take care where you tread, for even the waters themselves seem to conspire. As for the Tears of Destiny, you must not ask about them openly. Their name carries weight, even in whispers. I will explain everything when you arrive. Elias Varn. Elias is dead, he mutters to the restless waves below, his voice swallowed almost immediately by the damp air. The rhythmic creak of the ship's hull is his only answer. He exhales, his breath curling in the cold like smoke. So what is this really about? The handwriting is familiar, heartbreakingly so, but the words themselves are colder, sharper. They lack the warmth he remembers. The letter offers no direct answers, only vague hints and warnings couched in riddles. The mention of the Tears of Tragedy, a name Kyron has never heard before, burns in his mind. The words practically drip with urgency. The letter's closing lines gnaw at his thoughts as he folds it back into the envelope, its warnings stark and grim. Kyron feels the weight of the words as though they're carved into the paper itself. His eyes linger on the dock around him. The chaos and clamor of Darkwater swirl like a storm, but beneath the surface it feels too still, too watchful. Illuminated by the moons, he puts all thoughts of the letter out of his mind as he glances skyward. The city, for all its noise, seems to whisper only to him. With a final glance over his shoulder, Kyron steps off the docks and into the labyrinth of Darkwater, his boots striking cobblestone that gleams faintly in the glow of the moons. The city sprawls before him, a strange and beguiling maze of beauty and menace, as if every corner harbors both wonder and dread. He heads towards the address given to him. The canals wind through the city like tangled roots, reflecting fractured ribbons of the moonlight on their inky surfaces. Gondolas glide silently over the water, their gondoliers cloaked in shadow, their faces obscured by masks or the hoods of their dark coats. A few murmur strange phrases to their passengers, quiet enough that Kyron cannot catch the words. The passengers, silent figures cloaked in fine silks or ragged wools, sit unnervingly still as the boats disappear into the mist-drenched channels. The Gothic architecture of Darkwater looms around him, jagged and impossibly tall. Buildings lean precariously toward one another, their cracked facades adorned with intricate carvings that seem to twist and shift in the moonlight. Gargoyles perch on rooftops, their weathered stone faces frozen in grotesque expressions, but Kyron could swear some of their eyes follow him as he passes. Arching bridges span the channels, their iron railings slick with mist, leading to shadowed alleys that seem narrower than they should be. A constant sound of dripping water echoes in the distance, mixing with the faint creak of wood and the low murmur of voices that never seem to have a source. Kyron pulls his hood tighter, casting his features into shadow. The city seems alive, not just with the bustle of people, but with its own watchful presence, an oppressive sentience that presses down on him with every step. Yet it is beautiful in its own way, a haunting, melancholy kind of beauty, the kind that lures travelers in and swallows them whole. As Kyron walks through the streets, he catches glimpses of the city's dual nature. A young paperboy stands on a street corner, his voice cutting through the early morning silence as he calls to the sparse passerby. "Unseen oracle! Storm sinks ship in the harbor! Protectorate raid foiled in the drowned corridor! Paper, mister?" Kyron approaches the boy, flips him a coin and accepts the crisp, ink-smudged paper. He folds it neatly and tucks it under his arm, intending to read it later, but his sharp eyes catch the boy's nervous glances at the darkened alleys nearby. The city's shadows, it seems, are never far away. Beggars linger in the corners, muttering to themselves or to anyone who will listen, their words a jumble of cryptic warnings and rumors. "I hear the dreams of the city below," one whispers, through a broken-toothed grin as Kyron passes. The words send a chill down his spine, but he does not stop to ask. The canals branch off in every direction, some lit by flickering lanterns and others disappearing into pure darkness. A gondolier humbles a low, haunting tune as his boat glides past, the melody sinking into Kyron's bones like a chill wind. The narrow alleys between the taller buildings seem to stretch on forever, their depths swallowed by the shadow. Kyron resists the urge to glance over his shoulder, but the sensation of being watched clings to him like the mist. He imagines figures lurking in those alleys, their faces just beyond sight, their motives unknowable. He pauses at a market square, taking in his surroundings. The square is a chaotic blend of sound and movement, vendors calling out with exaggerated cheer, customers haggling over goods, and others simply drifting through the crowd with downcast eyes. The air smells of damp stone, spices, and something faintly metallic that Kyron can't place. The Protectorate, the city's enforcers, patrol the streets in pairs. Their heavy boots strike the cobblestones with measured precision, their lanterns casting pools of harsh, unforgiving light. Kyron watches as they pass by a merchant stall, the seller immediately growing silent and averting their gaze. The Protectorate men linger just long enough to cast a veiled threat before continuing down the street. Kyron knows better than to draw their attention. He hears snippets of conversation as he moves through the square, words that stick in his mind like thorns. "Smugglers again. The Protectorate will be out for blood." "Don't ask questions if you want to keep breathing." He keeps to himself as he was advised, his hood pulled low so that his horns are tucked out of sight. Yet even as he moves with deliberate anonymity, he feels the weight of unseen eyes. A sensation of unease prickles at the back of his neck, urging him to turn around. Kyron can resist the feeling no longer. Slowly, he glances over his shoulder. But the square is exactly as it was moments before, crowded with strangers, none of them paying him any mind. And yet... Kyron exhales, forcing himself to move on. Paranoia is useful in a city like this, he reminds himself, but too much of it can get you killed. Still, as he fingers the key in his pocket, his mind returns to the letter hidden in his coat, the words echoing loud and clear in his thoughts. This city devours the unwary. He thinks of the familiar, elegant script and feels his resolve hardening. Whatever dangers await, whatever secrets Darkwater harbors, he will face them. Somewhere in this strange and beautiful nightmare of a city, answers lie waiting. The drowned quarter feels like a city within a city, where decay and secrecy thrive. As Kyron ventures deeper into its tangled streets and crosses its many small bridges, the noise and bustle of the larger canals fade away, replaced by an eerie quiet. The narrow alleys smell of brine and rot, and the air feels heavier here, clinging to his skin like an unwelcome fog. The canals that snake through this district are narrow and winding, their surfaces marred by debris and broken reflections of crooked buildings. Even the light of the twin moons struggles to penetrate the gloom, casting faint, silvery outlines over the crumbling structures. At last, Kyron arrives at the address left to him in the letter. Before him looms a narrow, 3-story building, its brickwork darkened by time and neglect. A rusted sign hangs above the door, one corner broken off. Varn and Associates, Investigative Services. Kyron pauses to study it, the name stirring memories he's tried to bury. Elias Varn. He mutters the name aloud, tasting its bitterness. Dead men certainly don't send letters. The building appears abandoned, paint peeling from the wood, several windows boarded up haphazardly, and the faint stench of mildew in the air. But as he approaches, something nags at his senses. Beneath the layers of neglect, there are hints of life. Scuff marks lead up to the door, barely visible in the dirt. A lantern hanging by the entrance gleams faintly, the wick trimmed and the oil fresh. His hand tightens around the mysterious key that came with the letter. He examines it briefly in the moonlight before inserting it into the lock. The mechanism clicks, and the door creaks open into darkness. Kyron steps inside, boots crunching against dust and broken glass. The air within is heavy, stagnant with years of neglect, but it carries other hints, traces of something recent. And then, the scent hits him. Subtle but unmistakable, a fragrance he knows well, too familiar to be ignored. It curls into his mind like smoke, tugging at memories of home, of evenings spent together before everything fell apart. The office is small, cluttered, and clearly in disarray. A desk dominates the room, its surface littered with papers, yellowed with age and damp at the edges. A chair lies overturned in one corner, its legs snapped clean off. A broken lantern sits on the floor, the glass shattered but the wick strangely clean as though recently handled. Yet, despite the chaos, Kyron notices subtle signs of recent activity. A trail of clean footprints crosses the dust-laden floor. The desk drawers are partially ajar as if someone left in a hurry. Only one remains closed, held fast by its lock. And then there's that scent again, faint but persistent. It lingers near the desk, mingling with the musty air and stirring a sense of unease. He begins searching the room, careful not to disturb too much. Underneath the desk, his fingers brush against something cold stuck fast to the bottom. Another key. He tests it on the locked drawer he noticed earlier. The drawer slides open with ease. Inside is a single case file, yellowed but intact. The name scrawled across the margins is unmistakably his own, written in a delicate but familiar hand. He traces the letters with his finger, his heart tightening in his chest. She was here. Beneath the folder, another note catches his eye, hastily scribbled on a scrap of paper. He recognizes the handwriting immediately. Keep going, but don't trust anyone. They are watching. He rereads the cryptic words, his pulse quickening. The letter's warnings now feel more immediate, its implications sharper. He glances around the dimly lit office, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows, but the room remains still. A coat hangs by the door on a lopsided rack, its fabric old but eerily familiar. It's the same style Elias Varn used to wear, down to the frayed cuffs. Kyron stares at it for a moment, the cold dread pooling in his stomach. How long had it been since he had last seen Elias? Long enough to know that this, whatever this was, didn't make sense. The office feels haunted, not by ghosts but by the weight of unanswered questions. Kyron looks down at the case file, the note, and the strange key he still holds in his hand. Pieces of a puzzle are falling into place, but the picture they reveal is far from complete. He exhales sharply, locking the drawer and dropping the key into his pocket. The cryptic warnings, the unsettling familiarity of the space, the lingering scent, all of it points to one undeniable truth. Someone wants him here, and whoever they are, they're still out there. As the days pass, Kyron decides he can't walk away. The letter and the city's shrouded layers of intrigue all tether him to this place. The office, despite its unsettling echoes of the past, becomes his foothold. Darkwater is a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, and Kyron knows he'll need more than his sharp instincts to survive here. But he needs no further evidence than the familiar handwriting and lingering scent to know his sister is in danger. 6 years she has been missing. He spends his first days cleaning and reclaiming the space, pulling it out of its half-abandoned state. Dust clogs the air as he clears the floors, rights the broken furniture, and sorts through what remains of the office's former life. The desk drawers yield old tools of the trade, magnifying lenses, coded ciphers, and battered notebooks filled with observations about Darkwater's labyrinthine streets and canals. The walls hold maps of the city, pinned with fading notes in Elias Varn's handwriting. Most are useless to Kyron, time having eroded their relevance, but a few stand out. Marked locations tied to names of the founding families, cryptic symbols scattered like breadcrumbs. He doesn't yet know what to make of them, but they feel important. When the windows are replaced and the grime and clutter are finally manageable, Kyron looks at the rusted plaque on the door. Varn and Associates, Investigative Services. The name feels like a ghost clinging to his back, a reminder of Elias's death and the strange circumstances that brought him here. He pulls the plaque down and replaces it with a new one, the letters gleaming faintly in the light of the drowned quarter. Gloome Detective Agency. He lingers on the name. It's a symbol of his true purpose, cloaked beneath a facade of professional detachment. The agency will serve as a mask, a way to interact with the city's many layers without raising suspicion. Word of the new agency spreads quickly in the drowned quarter, where secrets are currency and trust is as fragile as glass. Kyron begins taking small cases, covering everything from missing persons to stolen heirlooms. He keeps these cases at arm's length, handling them with calculated professionalism. To Kyron, they are a means to an end. Each new client, each new encounter, feeds him pieces of the city's puzzle. He listens closely to rumors, maps connections between the factions, and quietly gathers intel on the founding families mentioned in Elias's notes. While the cases themselves rarely hold deeper significance, they allow Kyron to study the city's power players and its underbelly. Smugglers, enforcers, merchants, and even whispers of things lurking in the city below, all create a sensation of a great shadow looming over the place, watching his every move. Despite the clutter and decay, Kyron takes comfort in the routine of the agency. The cases that filter through the door are fleeting distractions, but each one carries fragments of the city's tangled history, and each one brings him closer to understanding what has happened to his sister and what has drawn him to Darkwater. In the quiet of his office, amidst the stack of old files, Kyron starts to compile his own notes. His eyes skim over the cases he's worked on, the strange disappearance of a merchant's daughter, an eerie murder that might be tied to an old family rivalry, a missing shipment that reeks of smuggling, and vague rumors of something sinister lurking beneath the canals. He finds it all too familiar, the city's dark undercurrent, a pull towards secrets he can't quite uncover. His desk is scattered with papers, old ledgers, and clues left behind. Maps of Darkwater's twisting streets and forgotten alleys, names and addresses that may or may not matter. Kyron looks at the mountain of case files before him and takes a deep breath. The city of Darkwater is vast and complicated, and his investigation feels like trying to untangle a web that grows ever more tangled the more he pulls. But the cases he's taken so far are only the beginning. His investigation has just scratched the surface, and he feels the weight of something much larger at play. As Kyron leans back in his chair, his mind drifts back to the clues that have been left for him. The cryptic warnings, the vague references to the tears of tragedy, and the unsettling hint that someone or something is always watching him. There are people in this city who know more than they let on, and Kyron is determined to find out who they are. He sits at his desk, scanning the pile of case files that have accumulated, each one a loose thread he can follow. But which case should he pursue next? With a sigh, he looks at his case files and begins marking them for the next stage of his investigation.